I love this country. I don't like what I've seen happen over the last 8 years. We've seen losses go up considerably in Canada over the last 5 years. The violence that we see associated with retail crime is not something I've seen in my 30 years.
Cadbury chocolate bars were locked up yet. I'm thinking, are they losing customers because the customers got to wait? The guy came in with a big bag, filled it with the baby formula, and he admitted to the cop, get this for the dealer, and they mix it with cocaine.
Got examples of individuals who've been charged over 80, 90, 100 times, never seen jail time.
That's right.
So how does someone like that not walk away feeling confident that there's no consequences? I get passionate, I wouldn't say angry, passionate with those individuals. You're bringing our industry down.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Lion Guard podcast. I'm here with a special guest, Rui Rodriguez. Some of you may have known him or know of him. Rui's been face of retail loss prevention in Canada, member of the RCC. I know him through all the RCC shows. I've listened to him talk. How are you, Rui?
Doing great, Tom. Great to be here.
Thanks for being on the podcast. I know you've been with HBC, Best Buy, Staples, and now you're with the RCC. What are you doing with the RCC now?
Yeah, so recently, Retail Council of Canada, RCC, I've been with about 4 years. I've worked with them for almost 25 years as a member. So as a retailer, always participated with RCC. They're the biggest retail association in Canada. But the last 4 years, I've been their executive advisor for loss prevention and risk management. In essence, what I do with them is gather together the retailers across Canada to understand their biggest concerns or the things that they want advocacy or resolutions for, and then work with the retailers to kind of harmonize that into a strategic plan or some key objectives we can work on, and then do that for them. So RCC provides me an opportunity, one, to work with retailers from all different sectors, sizes across the country. Two, to also then work with police, justice, different levels of government across the country to help the retailers with the crime that they're seeing nowadays, which is probably the biggest challenge we're seeing. What's galvanizing everybody together right now. We've seen losses go up considerably in Canada over the last 5 years. But more importantly, the violence that we see associated with retail crime is not something I've seen in my 30 years. And I remember my days when I started at Eaton's, which hopefully some people will still remember, and HBC. It was a rare occasion where somebody would pull out a weapon or certainly a gun, whereas nowadays I hear about it every single day. Yeah. So when you think about a retail employee, a lot of them might be young people it's their first job, it's excitement. They might be in school, living with parents. They don't sign up to go into a retail location, have a knife pulled on them or a gun or pepper spray. So even those incidents are grave, but we see this element of people leveraging violence when they're perpetrating the retail crime. And there's an understanding, and we hear a lot from the criminals we speak to, they don't fear any consequences. In Canada, they just don't fear consequences for their actions.
No. Yeah, we live in a crazy world. Like you were saying, back in the day, you've been around. I know John Smith's been around. I have a couple of guys, Martino, Henry, they've been with me from 35 years. Back in the day, it was do what you have to do to get the shoplifter, But now everybody's got cameras. These days, you got to watch what you're doing because everybody's taking photos. But look at the last videos I've seen on social media with the LCBOs and the Shoppers Drug Mart. These guys going in plain face, like you can see they're just filling up. And on their way out, they're telling you, you can't stop me. There was one where I think a customer got involved, started punching a guy out in the store, like trying to get the bags back. There was 5 of them in there walking out the stuff. The LCBO employees are telling the customer to leave them alone. So do you think it's going to change back to where it gets to where we're allowed to grab them, or because it's happening everywhere, and these guys know it.
Yeah, I would hope so, and I believe it will. The time that'll take to do that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But something drastic has to change in Canada. One, our laws are not configured today for what's required. Our criminal code, things like theft under, theft over, don't make sense for the type of criminality we see. So it doesn't really deal with that prolific offender. We've seen some traction in areas of the country. Manitoba has been exemplary. The work we've done with RCC and retailers in Manitoba, with the Premier Minister of Safety, Winnipeg Police Service, they've actually seen a reduction in crime this year, which is unheard for Winnipeg. The last 10 years, it's been increasing. Significant. So we know things are working, but what's working is when we get people collaborating. The retailers have definitely come to the table to want to work with the right stakeholders. Police have been great partners across the country. In general, there's still a few that need to come to the table, but generally police have been great partners to work with retail members on projects, whether it's blitzes on high-profile, high-risk areas or ORC projects. Where we've had some challenges have been at prosecutions. Again, Winnipeg has been exemplary. We've seen successes now in Vancouver. We're seeing some in different jurisdictions in Ontario, where we start to get prosecutors who understand that retail crime is serious. And there's a difference between shoplifting and what we now term retail crime. But for a long time, Tom, there's been this perception that retail crime is a victimless crime.
Yeah.
And retail crime, it's big organizations with deep pockets who can afford the losses. Yeah. And we've had to educate police, justice, and government that that's not the case. Yes, there's shoplifting, and it'll always be around. It's a very old art. It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
But to put the shoplifter in the same, or the retail criminal, the prolific, violent criminal in the same bucket with a opportunistic shoplifter is wrong. And we've had to educate people to see the difference. And the difference is the associated crime. It's not just the theft. It's the violence. It's the repetitive nature of it. And a lot of these individuals, we've had examples of individuals who've been before a prosecutor or have been charged over 80, 90, 100 times, never seen jail time.
That's right.
So how does someone like that not walk away feeling confident that there's no consequences? And our laws, when you're looking at theft under, doesn't carry a lot of severity, right? A lot of the more serious crimes like mischief, assault, weapon, get dropped and pled down for a simple theft charge. So these individuals understand the system and become more and more brazen. So that needs to change. Now, I'm happy to report that we're starting to see some progress. And if we can continue that progress and, 2026, 2027, get the government, get the justice, some of the ministers align, start to get some legislative changes made, bail reform adjusted, there's no reason that somebody who's committed an offense 30 times and continues to do daily and is brazen should go before a prosecutor and be released. And it doesn't mean they have to go to jail, but there should be programs that those individuals go to get diverted to either be rehabilitated or incarcerated if that's what required. But that person should not be released. They've already demonstrated they're not a good citizen. And the idea of being released is you're being released to be a good citizen. But if they're demonstrating they're not going to be a good citizen and we continue to release them, of course they become confident there's no consequence.
Exactly.
So that part, I think as we continue to work and through the RCC, so the other work we do with retailers at the table who are very eager to work to demonstrate that more aggravated crimes, and police continue to be partners with us, which they have. As we get more and more of the justice system to understand it, extrapolate it better, and make sure that these folks are charged, convicted, and held where necessary, and then get legislative amendments made, get our criminal code changed to address these criminals, then I do see a future where we start to revert back and that recidivism starts to come down. But until all that is aligned, I still think a lot of the criminals walking with that confidence with there's no consequences for my actions, so why would I stop?
Yeah, and I have a story, a little story. Way back doing a high-end grocery store, and a guy came in, had all the stuff in his hand that he wanted. He walked out the entrance door. And I stopped him, arrested him, brought him in. Police came, charged him, took him out in handcuffs because he was just caught a month or so before that at another retailer. They knew who he was, hundreds of charges for theft. I ended up getting subpoenaed to go to court with this guy. So he's probably hoping I don't show up, but I showed up. And in court, his defense, he had no lawyer, defended himself, walks up, says to the judge, well, my defense is, they had no shopping carts. The store was busy. Outside the door is where they lined up all the shopping carts. I went out to get a shopping cart. Case dismissed. And he walked out. He was laughing at me all the way to the parking lot while I was
and
walking.
You have to think about that, Tom. The prosecutor would have seen that, may have just seen that incident.
Exactly.
Right? But if that is packaged properly and they see that that person has prior incidents,
Yep.
then the onus is not to believe
Believe
that
that's-
story, right?
that's right.
And regardless, theft is committed the minute you leave that
the
property,
store.
right? That is
Yeah.
removal of property without the proprietor's consent. He did that. Yes, you might be lenient if it was a single incident, but
Yeah.
if there's evidence,
Yeah.
but again, a lot of the prosecutors at times only see that, one, case,
one case.
right?
That's
So that, and jurisdictionally, especially in Ontario, when you think about from Windsor to Ottawa, the number of police services that are around the 401 corridor, if you have a booster group, an ORC group that is going across, they get arrested in Windsor.
That's right.
They're going to get released same day. They're going to get arrested London tomorrow,
Barrie,
Waterloo,
wherever.
Peel, and they continue. But there's no sharing of that intel. Every police service is going to deal with them differently.
That's right.
So a prolific offender could hit across the 401 over a week, get arrested 8 or 9 times for one single incident. That needs to change. We need to do
Yes.
something where information sharing amongst police, among retailers is better. Because today we're inhibited by our privacy laws, but the criminals aren't.
Yeah,
They don't
that's
abide by the same rules.
That's right.
So we can't stay ahead of them because our laws limit our ability to share intel, and they prey on that. They take
That's right.
advantage of that. And that's more the professional groups, the organized retail criminals. They're smart, they're organized, right? They are out there to make a living stealing. And those goods, we've seen several examples of some large ORC cases
Right.
where we've seen elements where they're tied to guns, to gangs, to drugs, to prostitution, to human trafficking.
Yep.
This is not just about retail theft, right? The
that's right.
large-scale retail theft is feeding other criminal organizations. So this whole perception that it's just victimless crime and it's petty and it's small, there's still some work to be done there to educate folks.
Well, as you see now, like dollar stores, thrift shops, they all have security. And, you tell people out there that aren't in the security field, we service these stores. They're like, what? Who would steal from a dollar store? Who would steal from a
Everything
thrift
can
shop?
get traded.
Yeah,
Everything.
exactly.
We've seen post-COVID, we've also, and I don't want to pick on anyone, but it's the reality. Post-COVID, we've seen an increase of marginalized individuals.
Yeah.
And I use the term not to offend anyone, but you've got a lot more people dealing with mental health issues.
That's right.
Our drug addictions is known
Crazy.
across the country. The opioid epidemic that we have, alcohol abuse. We see cities that have had to deal with the encampments. So we see a lot of more marginalized individuals. Yes, they may be stealing themselves, but they're also being preyed upon by other groups to steal for them.
That's right.
And I'm not saying this anecdotally. We've seen this through some of our projects. An example would be at Vancouver. Last year when we did our spring blitz there, you can see these individuals being approached by others, clearly being asked to go steal. They go steal goods, bring it back. They're feeding these other cells, illicit markets, online marketplaces. And it's transient to a certain degree, but you have a lot of these chronic folks that are in a certain area. So even that increase of individuals that might have just stolen one item or two items for themselves are now being leveraged by others to steal en masse every single day.
That's right.
And of course, we then have this empathy or sympathy for these individuals. And I say this from a heartfelt way, and I talk to my daughters, I feel bad when I see someone on the street who doesn't have a home.
So do I.
And I say to my daughters, everybody should have somebody.
That's right. They have a family. There's
Yeah,
somebody.
Where is that family?
Yeah, that's
Why
what I
aren't we
say.
looking after? There are countries where the pride, you wouldn't see that.
That's right.
I'm born in Portugal, still go back every year multiple times, have my dad there. The last few years, we're seeing more of that. But I
right.
can tell you, in my youth and earlier years, we just didn't see homelessness there.
Yeah.
But now you see it. We didn't see the drug abuse. Now you see it in some of the major cities. So this has become a world epidemic. It's not just Canada dealing with this. Our neighbors to the south are dealing with it. But for a long time in Canada, I believe we are under this, it's fine here. We're not as bad as the US. Our crime is not as bad. And I think that lag of paying attention to it and acting quickly has put us in this position. We, for a long time, for lack of a better word, we're complacent, right?
Yes.
We are known around the world as being nice people.
People. Yeah.
And truly Canadians are. Generally good neighbors, they're good people. And we've had this sympathy and empathy for what we've seen, and we failed to act quickly. COVID just accelerated that.
That's right.
And now we're in this position where we have all these challenges. Any city you go to, the homelessness, the encampments and that, And we're not doing enough to look after that.
That's right.
And again, it's not to pick on it. We know that criminal things happen in those areas because we see it happening. So yeah, there's a lot to be done. I'm proud that the retailers are at the table, and I can't speak of anyone specifically without their permission, but I'm proud to see the retailers at the table because they're not just addressing retail crime, and these retailers are on every corner across Canada, right? You've got some retailers that are massive and have shops everywhere, but you've got mid and small and community. So there's retail everywhere. And retailers are actually saying, we want to be part of solving the problem that we're seeing in Canada. And it's not just the retail crime, it's just crime in general. That is a great thing to see the retailers at the table because some of these companies are very influential. Again, happy that over the last 2 years, we've seen the response coming back from law enforcement, justice, and some areas of government where they're acknowledging the problem and saying, what can we do together to work on it? And that's why I feel a bit optimistic that over the next couple of years, we can start to see some improvements.
Yeah, one thing I didn't know way back in the day was my first time to get one of these was a guy came in with a big bag, filled it with the baby formula, and he admitted to the cops, I get this for the dealer, and they mix it with cocaine. Mm-hmm. So he goes, I get my drugs either for free on how much I bring them, or I get it whatever, but they cut that and mix it with the cocaine, which I thought was wow.
But everything you mentioned earlier, like the dollar store type example, right? So any of those smaller, and you think, $1 or $2 item, why would you want to steal that? But if you think about it, a lot of these illicit markets who might be convenience stores and
I was going to get into that with you.
If they're going to send people to steal and put it on their shelves and sell it, it's pure profit for them. Right?
And I had a guy one time, he came in and he stole those 5 packs of gum, the Trident that comes with 5 packs. And I, couple hundred, $300 worth. And I said, what are you going to do with this? He goes, a couple stores will buy it from me.
Yeah.
He goes, they'll cut the packs, sell the individuals for $2 each. Right? I'm like.
And then that's why these illicit markets, they may have some goods that are legitimate.
Yeah.
And goods coming through the front or back door that are illegitimate. That's pure profit for them. They're not paying these guys. They're paying them 5-10 cents on the dollar, right? So that mix and that growth of illicit market, and then you think post-COVID, the online marketplace, right? How that is ballooned. It's incredible. You may have people who are literally setting up websites, and we know there are out there.
Yeah.
They don't have the merchandise. They're putting pictures up or putting offers out there.
That's right.
When somebody says, yeah, I want that, they're going to put in an order for someone to go steal the item, bring it in. But you don't meet with the person. They'll have someone like an Amazon or another person deliver it, or the many last mile couriers that exist nowadays deliver it to your door. So these criminals are hiding behind a website. Yeah. They're sending someone else or texting someone else, say, go steal this for me. Right? So that growth, even in the online marketplace, and let's face it, as consumers, maybe lazy is not the right word because I'm not a lazy person, but I love using online marketplace. My Amazon account's probably a daily occurrence. But if you think of the way we shop nowadays, we go online, we buy things secondhand, we buy whatever it is, and it shows up at our door. So from a consumer, it's very legitimate, and it's the way we choose to shop today. But on the back end, there's this mix of illicit marketplaces, and a lot of them can transact through legitimate businesses, whether it's Facebook Marketplace, Amazon, Kijiji. These are legitimate businesses, but that doesn't mean everybody who's selling through their platforms is a legitimate business. Yeah. So a lot more onus needs to be in place on how a business can set up to sell online, right? Because if you're not doing a lot of due diligence to make sure that business is reputable, anybody can transact online, and criminals do it.
That's exactly right. And, you get these mom and pops, little restaurants, they send people out to steal. I have caught lots where they hundreds of dollars worth of meat, and the cops come in and they'll make the deal with the cutlass. I'll tell you, I'm selling it to this store or restaurant, and
we've seen it through some of our OC projects. I won't get into the specific police service, but as part of those, using the anti-fencing units to trace the merchandise, you can see that. Again, so we don't speak anecdotally. I'm giving you things that I know for a fact.
Exactly.
Where somebody has watched a criminal steal meats from a grocer, literally surveil them going into a restaurant.
That's right.
And it's paying, they're paying them. Again, everyone's desperate, right? Yeah. Everyone is desperate to make another buck. And these folks know what they're doing is criminal. However, the consequences really aren't there. Right?
And I noticed it's mostly a lot of like drug addicts and things that'll do it for them because they need the
It
quick.
doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah.
Listen, it could be a person who just sees an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, a lot of people prey on those folks that are in those marginalized categories, and it's not fair. But it could be just a person trying to make a buck that knows, hey, I've got five or six businesses that are willing to pay me. I'm confident going to steal. If I go get arrested, I'll get a slap on the wrist. I'm out again. Right. Consequences aren't really severe. And that business owner is going, yeah, nobody has even the time to investigate this. Right. Exactly. And if they come asking me, I go, oh, I didn't know the guy was a bad guy. So again, it's so prevalent and it's so complex a problem now that I don't want to admonish anyone for not doing their part. I would admonish anyone who's not at the table trying to do their part. But it is a complex issue, what we're dealing with now. And I do stand by my statement that I believe for a long time we've rested in comfort that things were great in Canada, and now we're reacting a little bit too late. And then COVID, again, just really amplified all that. And we're now in this perfect storm where a lot of things are going wrong. And then add in what's going on between us and the U.S., our nice neighbors and tariffs and all the distractions, the environmental challenges that we have in this world. There's so much that is challenging government, challenging businesses. And on top of that, throw in all this retail crime that's going on. It's just a complex time for us right now.
Now, getting back to, let's get back, even the Patrick Shand inquest. You think that's what changed everything in the industry?
Yeah, I don't really want to comment much on it, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just seen a big change when that happened, so. But, okay.
We'll avoid that one.
Yeah.
So I'll answer that. I'll get to that answer, but maybe I'll explain why we're there. So police resources are undermanned, understaffed for what we're dealing with today. I hear a lot from a lot of our police partners. Many of their calls are going to do, safety checks, wellness checks. So there's a lot more burden that's been placed on police. The criminality that we see in retail, typically retailers, if their shrink or losses were fairly small, it's a cost of doing business. That's no longer the case. So retailers have explored all fashions of things they can do, locking things up. We saw that trend in the US quite a bit where you couldn't get to any merchandise. Well, your consumer's not going to be very happy about that. So if you're a brick and mortar retailer and you want to maintain that presence, locking things up means you're sending your customer online or to a neighbor. So you can't sustain that model because consumers are just not going to want to shop that way, especially honest consumers who walk in and go, I can't get anything. Why am I even here? I'll go online or I'll go to another competitor who's doing it differently. So retailers have to do what's best. Then you've got staff concerns because of the increased violence and the individuals they have to deal with. Hiring becomes a challenge. So getting and retaining individuals to work in brick and mortars is a challenge. So you have to look at your merchandise, how you protect your merchandise, how you're protecting your people, adding cameras, adding gates, adding different control points, trying all different things while remaining competitive. Because if you go too far, you're selling to your customer, it's not a good place to come and shop, right? So there's that fine balance. So the guarding industry, when you think about a paid duty officer, rate might be around $120 an hour. That's very rich for a retailer to maintain that a long time. But leveraging guards in your retail locations, there's various reasons why retailers do it. And I can't comment for anyone specifically from my experience. One is you have a body there that sends a message to the criminal that there's security presence and there's a deterrent. Two, you're sending a message to your staff that you care enough to bring somebody else in to add another level of safety between them and the bad guy. So there's that simple element. You put a uniformed person there, it immediately creates a bit of a presence and a deterrence. The second level is people that are looking at, what do I do now? This person keeps coming in, they see a security officer, they know the officer's only there as a presence, not doing anything, they're going to keep coming. And then your staff may not feel as safe with the fact that, well, we have a guard, but what is he really doing? Right? Is he not engaging? And a lot of retailers, because of COVID and because of the fact that we see these more violent incidents, have taken the stand to go hands off.
Yes.
Right? For them, it's, well, if we actually add a level of security and we ask the guard to go hands on, the challenge is when they go hands on, if there's a confrontation, that could create a bigger concern within their premises, which means customers or employees could get hurt.
That's right.
And it's a simpler choice to say, just let it go. So a lot of people start to question, well, why have the guards at all? Well, we come back to that deterrent factor. It does impact a number of individuals who are more in the opportunistic, low-level criminals. But certainly the higher criminals start to realize, oh, if you're hands off, then you're not going to do anything. And we hear them saying that, as you said earlier, Tom. They say, I know there's nothing you're going to do. Now, if you are a retailer and then considering going hands on, you have to make sure the guards that you have that can do that. And I'll be frank, I work with a lot of guard companies, and I'm not going to
mention.
I'm not going to speak ill of anyone.
Exactly.
But the level of training for guards is not there today.
I was going to bring that up to you.
It's not there. Like I work with yourselves as well. I work with a lot of guard companies. I invest a lot of my time training. I just deployed a new contract Tuesday. I spent time training those guards, showing them how to properly make an arrest. This might sound a bit braggart or arrogant, but when I have a guard going, wow, that really worked, I look, well, who the heck trained you?
Trained you.
Right? Because you should know how to do that. So the challenge going hands-on is you see a lot of these videos where guards are grappling with people or interacting in a certain way, or they're taking things too personally. And we've seen incidents where the assailant or the bad guy might say something very offensive, and the guard takes it emotionally and is responding with closed fists and kicking.
Exactly.
And I'm like, that's not professional.
No.
It doesn't matter what that person says to you
or
does
about
to
your
you.
mother or whoever. You
No. Detain the individual professionally and maintain it. So the guarding industry, unfortunately, needs to step up, because a lot of the guards, and I would hazard probably 70% of the guard population, is not at the level that I would say it needs to be. Right? The level of training, because to be comfortable to say, I want you to go hands-on and handle this professionally, detain the person, get them out of the public, deal with reading them their rights, interacting with the police, writing a proper report, and doing all that, that level is, it's the exception. It's not the norm in the guarding industry. I commend the guarding companies that are spending a lot more time and investing, but it can't be train your guard, deploy them. It has to be train your guard, bring them back in for training, and continue to do that. I say to every guard I work with and every guard I deploy for a client, if you're not going home every day and practicing the things we talked about, and I remember my days at Eaton's and HVC, my teams used to do this every day. We used to allot time for our teams to come in and scrap it out, do the use of force, do the verbal judo, practice the escalations, because when you need it, you want it to be recall. Right? But if you train it once and you work for 3 months and you've never had to make an arrest, when that happens, the adrenaline kicks in and you don't know what to do.
That's right.
Where I want the guards to go, when that happens, I want you to go into your mind and go step 1, step 2, step 3, grab that wrist, turn that arm, grab that elbow, lock that arm. I want it to be mechanical so that you can recall it and do it immediately. And it works every time, Tom. But a lot of people are not in the ability to do so. And they're not in those situations often enough. Right? I've seen police officers that don't have that level of training. Look at some of the videos you're seeing. I apologize to all the police officers who might watch this. When I see an officer trying to take somebody down and they're struggling, like, have you been going through your training? So guards, absolutely, we need a higher level, because the utilization is going to continue. Now, another thing that obviously, and we're working with in Manitoba, looking at a tiered level of guarding. As a guard, you go get your guarding license, you get your 40 hours. Plenty of people out there that probably fake those 40 hours, and you're deployed to a site. We need a level of guarding that you have to have recurring training, recertification, and at a level. So the retailers that want to avail themselves on, or the police services that want to have another element of people, special constables, call it what you will, that can do some of this other work, they have to be qualified. And the only way I believe you can do that is you have to maintain the training. You have to recertify. You have to be able to demonstrate repeatedly that you can do it. So I think for the guarding companies, you got to invest in your people. You have to find the ways. For the businesses out there using guard, you got to look at your rates. Respectively, anybody who's paying $25 an hour for a guard can't expect to get a good guard.
That's right.
You know, that minimum has to be 32 to 35 now. You have to think through, if you want a professional, I'm not talking a young kid, it's their first job, a professional guard
right.
who can do all these things we talked about, recall their use of force, stay calm under pressure, de-escalate a situation, be able to document what occurred succinctly, work with police to transfer that matter over. That's a professional. What does a person have to make, right? If you think nowadays a person making $20 an hour can't survive on 40 hours a week to have a cell phone, a rent, maybe a car.
Whatever, yeah.
You can't.
Insurance, whatever.
But that's what a lot of guards are making or below, right? A lot of guards who are making in that 18 to 20 range, they're young people living at home with have very little experience. So if you want that 5-6 year experienced guard, these guards have to make $25, $26 an hour in order to make a living.
That's right.
Because otherwise you just end up with the transient population of young people who come into that and then move on to something else. Another career, maybe policing. But if you want to maintain the professionals, they got to earn a living.
That's right.
Now, some of them clearly do, but then they're deployed into, you know, the hospitals, the areas that are much more long-term. They have great contracts. They're there for a long period of time. Some guarding may be unionized and have some really choice accounts.
Yeah.
And they're being paid a good rate. But in the retail industry, you know, my call out to the retailers, you have to look at what you're willing to pay, right? If you're going to pay $28 an hour or less for a guard, you can't expect to get a top tier professional guard. You're going to get a young person who is ill-equipped to do the job at the level that's required now. If you want that person to be somebody who is actively engaged in the guard duty, going hands-on, de-escalating situations, being there to comfort your workers and show that presence, that's a professional. That's somebody who has a bit of a repertoire, has that experience. You're not going to get that from young people. Now, it's not a shot at young people. There are some young people that are brilliant.
That's right.
Brilliant from the get-go, right? 18, 19-year-old. You're not going to keep those people long.
They don't stay long. No.
At 18, 19 bucks,
No.
You're not keeping them long, right? So what I mean about those young people will quickly understand that they're in a place that is good for now, but they're moving on.
Moving
quickly.
on. Yeah. But I get, you know, I've been to retailers, you know, owners of stores or whatever, and they're like, I can get a company 50 cents cheaper than you. Or I'm using the company. Why would I go to you? You're charging me $1 more or whatever it is. But they sit there in the same conversation telling you they're not happy with them.
Yeah.
But they'll keep them because it's 50 cents cheaper.
That I think is something, Tom, and again, we call it smart guards. My partner in one of my ventures, John Smith, and I, we use the term smart guards. And that's not to mean guards are stupid. Not at all.
No, I know. Yeah.
Smart guards meaning how do we add greater value? So when we look at a guard and you think about the retail business, which we spend a lot of our time working in, do some commercial and other as well, but the bulk of my work is in the retail industry. And having spent 30 years in retail, understanding the return on the investment and the value proposition. And that's where I think guard companies can do a much better job, right? You can have a guard standing in a position and you're charging a certain rate, and the company is saying, I want it 50 cents cheaper, because they don't necessarily perceive the value.
The value, that's right.
But if you start by what else could this guard be doing? And I do that for some of my clients. So I look at, if I'm going to have a guard or multiple guards there anyway, what are the things that the retailer would do for themselves and have an associate being paid an hourly rate to do that the guard could do because they're there anyway?
Picking up shopping baskets, the
Audits.
carts. Yeah.
You know, like I have guards who can audit an entire store.
Exactly.
Go around and take pictures of merchandise to make sure it verified. They're there anyway, right? Doing certain checks on certain areas, doing the physical assessments of the building. There's a lot of things that if you spend the time, and I say curate, speaking to your potential client about what are the things that we could possibly be doing for you that you're already paying to have a person here, And in the meantime, as part of those post orders, part of the duties, they could be doing that. So you're saving money. So if you're going to pay $20 an hour for someone else and you can save that or redeploy that labor doing something more efficient, if we do that, then there's value, because then you start to list those as that would have cost you $20 an hour, 8 hours a day. We're saving you that money. So that extra dollar or two that we're asking for in order to keep that guard is very much worth it. And then you look at the value proposition, but it's taking the guards, and can always do it, but figuring out, can I have the person that I have there doing other things for that business that is going to bring value back to that business that they can then leverage and use?
Yeah, I've tried that with some retailers, but they'll turn and say to me, we have our own LP people that come in and do our audits. Yeah, I want you to pick up our baskets or shopping carts, or there's a spill on the floor. If you can, get the mop, we'll do all that. But when it comes down to like, oh, we'll do your audits, it's like, no, we have people.
And listen, Tom, it's going to be, that's the negotiation,
Yeah.
right? And that's part of any good strategic discussion is what are the things that you're willing to give up that we could do for you that is going to bring value, quantify what that value is, what would you be paying for it that we're saving you. Now, not everybody's going to want to give up, but what I find incrementally as you start to demonstrate that value, and retailer may be challenged with reducing their labor budget, reducing their OPEX, they can then look at, oh, you talked about that before. I'm being asked to shrink my budget.
That's right.
Could you still do that? Yeah, of course. Right? And I might be able to do it for $1 or $2 more versus the $20 you're paying over there.
Yeah.
So it's keeping that top of mind, and it's partnership. It's working. And I truly believe in that. Vendors have been partners my entire life, my entire career for 30 years. I always looked at, when I got into those decision-making roles, which was interesting and challenging because it was the whole fake it till you can make it, and then looking for partners that could educate me, because you're now saddled with budgets and responsibilities. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this stuff. I didn't say that at the time.
No, exactly.
I say it now, but I go back, my most senior role started at Best Buy, and, giving budget of millions of dollars that I have to plan. I'm like, I don't have any idea how to do this.
Yeah.
But looking at, I met this really creative CFO. Let me reach out to her, see if she can educate me on what a P&L is all about. And then immediately to my vendor community, the people I trusted, right? Whether it's physical security, guarding, electronic security, merchandise protection, going, okay, help me out here. I need to start to budget this stuff. What does that look like? Well, Rui, we do this all the time with businesses. If you don't have a template, here's what it could look like. Here's the things to consider. Which made me look very smart when I actually went back to my boss and said, here you go. And they're like, wow. And I think in their head, they're thinking, how'd you figure this all out? We just threw you into the deep end. But I prided myself on that, leveraging those relationships with our partners. And I think that's how the vendor community should be acting, right? As partners. What I find today still, Tom, is there's a lot of trying to sell widgets or selling people versus selling solutions and value, right? Whether it's the physical security or guarding, I'm going to sell you X amount of cameras for it. Well, that's just hardware. That's just widgets. Right. You have to take the time to have those conversations, understand what the problems are, and look at what are the solutions or the value proposition I can offer you to help you with your problems, to make you look smart, make you look more complete. Because trust me, this is me bearing my soul. When I reflect back, if anybody thought, wow, Rui, that was awesome, there was a group of people behind me that had taught me how to get to that place. And I think my best story is probably at Staples. When they were looking to bring conversion to the company, and I kept hearing this conversation, and I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. And I started talking to some of my CCTV partners, and I'm like, I think I can get my camera provider to actually get me the analytics and get the POS, marry that up, divide those two numbers, and get conversion for Staples. And I did it. And I was very proud of it. So proud that when they took it away from me and gave it to operations, I'm like, hey, that's mine. No, that's not an LP thing. But it was where I started to really dig into, wow, we have all these camera systems, and I wanted more cameras in every store, but I was being told, no, we don't need cameras in low-risk stores. But the minute I said we can get conversion, I got the budget approved to go get camera systems put in every store. So these type of stories, I think, they're learning experiences of in the security industry, and as a partner to any business, whether it's retail or other, is looking for How do I address the problem that that person is having or that business is having through what I can offer? But I have to understand the problem, be able to regurgitate it back to them, make sure it's aligned with what truly is a problem for them, and bring it forward as a solution that they can then look and go, well, there's value in that. I'm actually saving money, or I'm net neutral, or I'm deferring money elsewhere that I would have otherwise spent that I can use for other things. Now, that's not an LP thing. When I talk like that, that's a culmination of 20 years of a lot of strong people. Annalisa King, if she ever watches this, who was a CFO at Best Buy, probably doesn't have any understanding of the influence she had on me when I was there by listening to the things she said. Because as CFO, when I typically, my comments, no one else's, see them as more bean counters, very pragmatic, she had a very majestic way about the way she explained things. But I listened, and I'm like, I'm going to find times to chat with her and there, because the lady explains finance in a way that makes sense to me. But I have stories like that through my entire career. Even LP executives that made the time for me when I was a junior, and I'm like, hey, do you mind grabbing me a coffee? I'd like to pick your brain on something. But they made the time. So, I come back to, I relate to that, using our community and our vendor partners and others to help add the solution, add the value, certainly helps. And that will help the guard industry. I think in the guarding industry, the guarding companies have to elevate their presence, their quality, the individuals that they're. However, they need to have a discussion with who they're providing. Don't just send a warm body. Do the homework up front. Do the work up front to understand what is your true problem. Because sometimes it may just be, I just need a body there.
That's right.
I'm being killed right now, and there's pressure. I just need a body. Okay, that's that for now. Keep those conversation goals, because then it's, when does that body become somebody that can add additional value, right? And keeping that conversation going. So you can't just be, I see this with a lot of guard companies, get big contracts, get a lot of contracts, and then the offering starts to dilute.
Exactly.
Right? Because the people, once you go for the bigger projects, you're diluting your own people. You're having to go on a pool of lesser quality individuals. Right. And then that business or retail goes, wait a minute. And I see this a lot, right? I speak to my vendor partners, go, hey, the quality individual I just got is not what we agreed to originally. Yeah, but there's, we're stretched, wherever. We have to work on that. So there's a lot in that. Retaining is critical. Recruiting, the training, because I do believe if you take someone who has the passion, who has the willpower, who can put in the work, I genuinely, Tom, do not believe anyone with the good attitude and the effort can ever fail in life.
Yeah.
Right? Can't. So to me, it's recruiting those individuals, making sure we're supporting them, that they're putting in the effort, the attitude's there, and we're infusing them with that knowledge, and that has to be continuous. And I believe they will, even a mediocre guard can get better. But if we just throw them out there and forget them about, we can't expect them to improve.
Yeah, there's some of the worst areas in Toronto. You walk into a retail and you'll see the guard. It's like, this person should not be in here.
And
you can tell they're intimidated.
But they don't, listen, they don't care about their job at that point.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I say this when I vet guards and train guards, there's certain things we talk about. Posture is absolute one of them. You have to understand you're on a stage and people will be judging you.
That's right.
And if you're standing, hands behind your back, chest out,
Leaning
chin out,
on,
confident, you look professional.
If you're leaning on a cart or whatever,
Foot against the wall, leaning on a fixture, on your phone,
talking
pacing
to your
back and
headphones.
forth.
Yeah.
Anybody looks at, well, he clearly is waiting for when the shift is over.
Ends.
That doesn't look professional.
No.
And I get passionate. I wouldn't say angry, passionate with those individuals. I go, you're bringing our industry down.
That's what I say.
I do not like seeing that.
No,
if you took on this job and put on a uniform, you have to stand at attention, put your chest out, chin up, and be alert, aware, and put in the effort and come with the right attitude. Otherwise, go do something else, right? Doesn't matter where you're working as a guard. It could be a concierge. It could be in a high-profile site. You are a professional in that uniform, and you need to represent the industry. But I see it every day, guards that are just bored. They're pacing back and forth. And then you have to understand why. Because it's not always their fault.
No, exactly.
Right? They were deployed. Did they get proper instruction? Do they know what they're supposed to do? Are they pacing back and forth because they really don't know what to do with themselves? I just spent, launching this new project on Tuesdays, was walking with a guard and showing him things. So as we're walking by, I see somebody sit on a chair, put a bag down, puts a couple of books down. And I went back and I said to the guard, why do you think I went back? And he looks at me and goes, I'm not sure. Well, the guy's got a bag. I said, he has a bag, but he's got 2 books there. So I'm having fun now, right? It could otherwise be boring right now, but I'm having fun. I've got somebody sitting on a couch, got a bag, a backpack, a couple of books that haven't been purchased yet. But as I'm walking, I'm having fun. It gives me a purpose. And every time I come back, if I see that bag getting open, that's another. Now, do I believe he's actually going to steal those books? No. But it's giving me something to be occupied.
That's right.
Right? You don't ever have to be bored. You play this game. You can pick people to look at and just watch, but it's teaching you things. But it's, when I have these conversations with guards, Tom, I see their eyes light up like, oh, yeah, you can turn it into fun. Yeah, of course you can.
Well, and you see that in the bookstores, right? People will go sit there, read the book for an hour. They'll just get up and walk out with the book. And that's exactly what I was training. So I always said, see the guy over there, he's got the bag. He's sitting there reading his book, but we'll keep an eye on him because I'm not saying he's going to steal it, but
easiest way
there's
to
a chance
steal,
he might just, walk out with that book.
The easiest way to steal is do it overtly.
That's right.
People just stare. I remember back in my days at Best Buy, we had a couple of incidents, but I remember one, and it was a Mississauga location. Gentleman literally went into the store, took I think it was a 45-inch TV at the time, which back then was very expensive.
Yeah.
Took the box, put it on a cart, flatbed, rolled it out the front door. Now, Best Buy at the time had a policy, and still believe has, where you check receipts on the way out. The person didn't, because he's literally rolls it out the front door, goes into the parking lot, loads it up in minivan, and drives off. And everybody believed, he must have paid for it, because who would do that?
Exactly.
Right? So the easiest way to steal overt, but a guard and a security professional, a P has to look at, wait a minute, what's odd about this, right? There's always going to be failures. But yeah, we've all got these great stories, but it's taking the time in the guarding industry right now to show them, get them to get to the point where you see that glint or the follow-up question. That's when you know they're interested. If I speak to guards and they're like, oh yeah, okay, and there's just not interest, I'm like, yeah, you're not in the right place. Because for me, it's a curiosity, right? I love this industry, and I probably stayed too long in it because of the curiosity.
That's like me, yeah.
I love problems, and I love trying to fix them. I like trying to solve them, and maybe that's the arrogance in me that I don't like to leave anything unsolved, but that inquisitive nature and the curiosity has always driven me. Borderline arrogance when I was younger. I'd like to say more confidence now, where I got to find the solution. But you should have that thirst. And in security, there's that problem solving as well as that element of, I have a duty to protect some folks in some cases. So I have to make sure that I create a posture of presence that I make them feel safe.
Yeah.
And when I don't see that, that's where I get, wait a minute, why did you choose this as a career? Right? Because there's a sense of responsibility that comes with that. When you put on a uniform or your LP or that, there's an element of you're solving problems for your company, but you're also protecting that company. Its premises, its people, its product. You have to have a passion for this. So if I don't see it, and folks, that's where I typically, not in the right career. This is just not a right choice.
Yeah, I get in trouble with my wife all the time. I'm shopping with her, and I take the cart and I run out. And she goes, "Why are you doing it? You don't even. They're not even a client of yours. Doesn't matter. It's just in me. I got it.
It's in you." I tell you, my partner and I, and we both got kids, and my two daughters who are now 20 and 24. Every time we go in a mall together, we have the same conversation. Like I'll see somebody, either a booster,
Exactly,
and they're like, "Daddy, turn it off." I'm like, "No."
That's like me.
24-year-old now who's actually done some work as a security person at a point. Now we're like, "Daddy, what did you just see?" And she wants to know, and I'll explain. See the bag on the floor. See the person who's putting the pants on the table there. Somebody's going to come along and sweep those into that bag. And she's like, "You think so?" And sure enough, and then I'm on the phone with a colleague, say, "Hey, I'm at this location. I'm seeing somebody. Do you have anybody in store?" That still is fun for me. Even now, that's still fun.
I've got clients like that where I'm sitting out in the mall and I'll see somebody go in, I'll get the arrest, and they'll, their head office, the girl will be at the manager's on the phone saying, "This guy just stopped," and the head office will actually ask to talk to me, and I'll get set up with their LP, who's in charge of their LP, and I'll end up getting that client.
But
there's a few things I wanted to ask you. You mentioned the story of the CFO. I think that's very important, because I think those things really mean a lot to people like us when we're just working our way up. While you were at Holt Renfrew, you mentioned a few interactions you had with, I think, Mr. Weston.
mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to ask is the whole Costco thing compared to all the Canadian retailers. We look at Costco, everyone shows the receipt, everyone shows
I was
the
going to bring that up,
It's not
Costco.
awkward, right?
Yeah.
But why doesn't it work with Canadian retailers? I understand there's a membership, there's all that, but can't you put that in the fine print somewhere and make that work here? Because Costco makes it work in Canada, right? And the third thing I wanted to talk about, or I wanted to pick your brain on, is like the whole AI thing versus will it augment, will it make it redundant, will it be where it's all Amazon Go type of stores where you don't even need cashier's guards, everything is captured, right?
Hold on. Can I say one thing about it? Do you actually think, when you're walking out of Costco, the young girl, lady, whatever, she looks at the thing, she puts a yellow tip, go ahead. They're not going through your whole thing to see what you paid for.
They used to. I would agree with you, Tom.
Yeah.
They used to do that. They used to go through every item. So I'll address the receipt item. So if it's always been part of your practice, and it was at Best Buy when I was there as well, we had literally the yellow shirt or blue shirt at the door that would do those checks.
Yeah.
So it was the understanding and the expectation by the consumer. That's just a business practice. Costco always has been a business practice.
Yeah.
So everybody was indoctrinated into that. If you're a consumer going into those locations, you know that's their business practice. It's not new. The challenge is when you try to introduce it as a net new.
Yeah.
People have known you all along. So grocers and others who try to introduce this. Your customer who's known you all along hasn't had to go through that. Even though they might be a Costco shopper, they associate that behavior is something I would do at Costco. It's not something I would do coming out of my local grocery
store. Yeah.
And now they've introduced it. Here's the challenge. The honest person sees that as friction,
That's right.
right? The bad person is going to take advantage of it and try to make a complaint about it. But the honest person is like, why are you guys doing this now? You never used to. You're slowing me down. And anybody who's having a bad day may see that as friction and go, well, this isn't normal. Now, retailers have to start to contemplate that. If your legitimate customers are pushing back on this and there's a risk that they may go elsewhere, then you might not want to do that, right? Because you're going to lose that consumer. But there's always waves. I believe there's always that, I call it noise. And I think change management, and it's how much risk you want to take. When you introduce something new, I think you always have to factor in a level of change management. But retailers sometimes react way too quick, right? There's been Manitoba example, and I'll give you one. When they were having a lot of issues in Manitoba, Liquor Board introduced the ID checks at the doors. So instant change there. You're going to a liquor store, you have to provide a valid ID. The bad guys aren't going in, right? Either they don't have it or certainly not going to produce it. Ontario tried to do that. You get immediate backlash from consumers. Why are we doing that? And then we pull back. So that's the danger of introducing something new. You have to be prepared for that noise. You have to be able to ride that curve of people are going to complain. They're going to complain for a while. And like everything, it becomes normalized. But if you're not willing to ride that out because you're thinking about how much business am I going to lose because I'm annoying my regular customers, and you pull it back, you'll never get to see the other side of that. Right? And that's the risk. In today's very dynamic retail environment, if you're making a massive change and you start to get complaints, and now with social media, people are on social media,
right.
this and that, you have people looking at it and having to contemplate, do we continue this and ride out that noise and wait for it to normalize and people to move on to another cause? And then that becomes a practice? Or do we pull it back and apologize for something that we were trying to do that obviously is having more of a negative effect in our minds than it's positive? So that's anytime you introduce something that new, I think you need to be convicted. And speaking to the CEOs of the world, you need to be convicted to ride that out, right? See the other side of that. Human nature is change comes, we complain about change, some other change happens, things get normalized, and the other curve. And through that, you got to manage it if you want to get to that other side and maintain that practice. I think retailers are very good at that. It's just whether or not you want to take that risk. And a lot of times folks are like, well, let's scrap that. You look at easy checkouts or self-checkouts.
I was going to bring this up.
Retailers went berserk with that, putting it out there, saving labor and all that. Losses went through. Some have pulled it back. Right? So we try. Retailers are very smart, very nimble, looking at measuring everything. And, we have the saying, what gets measured gets done. It's looking at works. And if it's working, great. If it's not, try something different. I think for the items that you want to implement, you have to have a long-term plan to be able to ride out that noise. So I think, to me, that's a bigger factor. As far as influential people in my life, I have a ton of them. My mom, God rest her soul, who's been the biggest influence in my life, always taught me to look for the people that can teach you something. Younger, Rui was very, very arrogant. Ego drove a lot, wanting to be the best at everything. I would hope this Rui remembers all those lessons and is much more confident in my ability. So I've had a lot of people, and I remember, he won't mind me saying this, John Castiglione at Staples, who was my boss, the COO there, pulled me in his office one day and said, Rui, I've given you all this advice, but you keep ignoring it. And I'd look at him and I truly consider him a friend. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe I just wasn't ready for that advice at that time. Like, I thought the ego in me was like, I know I can do this. And then, of course, I'd come back and like, yeah, maybe you were right. You have to be ready for that advice, right? So for me, I'm at a point now where I can reflect on all of this and go, what was the advice that I should have, that was sound then? So, to your question, I had a lot of influential people in my life that, as I reflect over the last few years, it's brought me a lot of joy, but it's also brought me a lot of success to some degree, but a lot of peace of, man, why didn't I listen then? But I can look into it because I wasn't ready. The honest response is, at that time, I wasn't ready to listen to that advice. I can learn from it now, but I'm not going to go back and try to change things. I'm who I am today because of the culmination of all the things that have happened to me in my life. I can't go back and change things and say, oh, I should have done it differently. I'm having the best life I can have right now, and I haven't been able to say that in the past. My daughters are my wonder, my partner, my business is doing well. And if everything folded tomorrow, I have a belief, as my youngest daughter would tell me, Daddy, you'll figure it out. That's all come from a combination of all those people in my life that have been there trying to drill things into me, and I was ignoring them, but now can reflect on, go, oh, that's what that advice was. So that's how I should have taken it. So yeah, listen, from a business perspective, I think as a community, we can do a lot more. We can do a lot more to work at a community. I think there's a lot that can be done, but we need the time. When I was Best Buy, Staples days, I recall in my job description, there was actually a percentage of time that was meant to spend with RCC, spent with mentors, spent with other colleagues, and we took the time. We used to meet. We used to converse, share best practices. When I speak to my colleagues now, they don't have the time. And I'm like, wait a minute, it was in our JDs. Well, it's probably still there. But you got VPs, directors of LP risk, asset protection that don't have the time we used to 20 years ago to get together with colleagues and share and learn and do all that. And now it's under fire, constantly go, constantly dealing with the issues. And when you get a free break, you look forward to that time. So I think we need to find a bit of time on how we, as a community, come back together in a meaningful way to start to do more of that sharing, take the time to learn from each other. And again, from a vendor community, there's a ton there, because in my career and a lot of colleagues that I have who reflect, our vendor community back in the day, who now are probably friends, were there to help us through that. They had the time as well. They weren't trying to sell us widgets all the time. They were helping us on how to be smarter at our jobs.
Yeah, I'm still friends with lots of guys from way back. They're all retired, but I still keep conversations with them. And
yeah, you had asked one other question, if you're at the end. About AI. So to address the AI, so overstimulating people is not a great thing, right? So AI brings this promise of a lot of things, but this isn't new, right? The prospect of, when I think through CCTV and the old VCR and everything, and the original analytics that we had, and my own example of Staples and leveraging cameras for conversion, and now we talk about machine learning and AI, without human intervention, it'll never work well. So this idea of replacing humans, no, it augments humans. It's still a machine looking at data, and the more data, the better. But responsibility means a human being still needs to interact with that data and make decisions. And that's where I think we need to be diligent. When you think about AI in a group of people, AI can certainly, based on input, if I look for the person with, a tattoo on his arm and a watch and a white shirt, it'll probably extract an individual, but a human still needs to be able to say, yeah, that's Rui, because it can be misunderstood. So I think technology and AI specifically can offer so much value, but it needs to be looked at in a responsible manner. And without the human interaction to teach it and to make smart decisions, I don't think it'll ever replace a human. I think it'll make humans more efficient. If I think today of it, what even just machine learning AI is doing in LP systems, you can put all kinds of criminal data into a software and let the software go look for. So if 50 people are looking for an individual with the tiger tattoo on his arm, the software can bring that
Bring that
forward,
up. Yeah.
right? And bring it. It still needs the humans to interact with that, ability to go execute that, to be able to bring police together. The data itself and the offering of that data is not conclusive, and it can't do more than that for you. It's analyze the data, bring things for you. Now, there's technology, robotics, and all these other things that in that space, picking goods from a warehouse and that, absolutely, it can replace humans. In our world of security, I think leaving a machine to make a decision, all it needs to do is make one error, and that can be drastically impactful. And we've seen it already. It's the case of the twin. Machine can't say, that's Tom, if it's Tom's twin, right? A machine can't take somebody that looks very similar and conclusively say that is someone. So I think AI brings a lot of offerings, and people should be learning it, availing themselves of it, trying it, but never thinking that it's going to solve all their problems and that I can just sit back and chill. I think if anything, it makes the human more efficient, but more involved, where you now have these outputs coming out that you have to deal with. And that's the danger of, is you can't excuse it any longer, right? You can't spend hours researching information. That can be done in seconds. You got to take that information and now act on it.
100 years from now, what is the retail store in terms of having uniform morality or even people at all? What does that look like?
Yeah, interesting.
It's a robot.
Yeah, it may very well be, Tom. But here's the interesting cycle of retail. I don't think brick and mortars will ever be gone. People look for places to go, destinations. I think retail in 100 years will have more, certainly the digital element, more experiential, and likely a lot of robots there to be able to help you, likely a human or here and there who's going to bring that added experience. But I think retail will just be one big morph. It's just your life cycle. It's the option as an individual to interact however you want, right? If 100 years from now, if you'd said 10, more realistic, 100 years from now, I imagine I just step on something, say, send me to Ibiza, Spain, and I'm just going to appear there and likely get the latest fashion I want, hit a party and beam me back home, because reality is, who knows, right? That's 100 years. But I think retail will always be around. I think people will always be involved in retail, because experientially, as human beings, we seek that out. We seek out the experiences. We seek out human connections. Yes, sitting at home and ordering your goods online makes sense, but eventually, most people seek that human interaction, that experience, that somebody waiting on me or looking after me, or that special moment where I've saved up and I want to get this, and I don't want to just buy it online. I want to be somewhere where somebody is creating an experience for me. So I think retail in 100 years will be much more of an experience versus going to buy a good, right? Because you can, in 100 years, you can get that home. Your fridge probably orders it for you and fills it up, and you don't even need to do a thing. I think retail will be much more experience-based.
You spent some time in Europe, Portugal probably, and Canada obviously, and then the States. What would you say from a loss prevention perspective? Each one of those countries or your continent of Europe, what do they do? What's the one thing that they do very well that you could wave a magic wand and bring and implement into Canada?
Well, listen, Europe, I would say, is always a bit ahead in the trends and that in all respects. Focusing specifically on security, security is taken seriously, right? Whether you're in Spain, France, Portugal, going to other countries, a security officer or a security professional in those countries is taken serious. Now, I spent a lot of time in Portugal and Spain. When I walk into a grocer, listen, I love watches. If I walk into a watch store, guaranteed there's going to be an armed security officer. I expect it. And I'm likely going through a man trap to do that. It doesn't make me feel bad at all. It actually makes me feel good. I walk in a grocery, there's likely at the entrance of the grocery store, once you're in that front door, an officer in uniform with a gun on his side or a baton standing there that's probably 6'2" and looks like ex-military, right? Not a young person. So security is taken, I think, a lot more serious in Europe, and they're hiring for that level. The further off you are in a more high-risk country, even more so. And I do mean like ex-military. In countries like Portugal, where military was mandatory, you got kids at 18, 19 going to the military, coming back, and they're going into those security roles. Well paid, and it's a career. US, a little bit more. I think security is a little bit more beef. They certainly had a higher degree of crime, and you'll see locations where you have higher degree of security, whether they're carrying guns or things of that nature. Whereas Canada, I think, has been the least ramped up in that security perspective, and therefore we haven't always hired that. So I think the model of Europe, if you compare to from a consumer, if you're in Paris and the Champs-Élysées and you walk into a high touch boutique, an LV, or you go into a Cartier, you will see security. It's expected. But you'll also see it on another location where you're just going to grocery stores. So it's commonplace. Whereas in Canada, there's still that friction. When you deploy security, people start to look and go, what's wrong? Whereas in most countries, it's expected. I would more question, why isn't there security here? So I think that's a bit of a difference is Canada, we're still dealing a lot with consumer perception. The more we deploy security, the more we potentially see some consumers who are going, why is that there?
Yeah.
Why do we need that? What's wrong? Because again, we've always believed Canada is very safe. Do we really need all that? But if you're coming from a place like Europe, or if you're in cities like Detroit, LA, for many years, you would expect to see it. I think the population there just expects it. We're still, as I said, we're still dealing with, is it really necessary? I would say most people nowadays, unless they've been hiding under a rock in Canada, know it's necessary.
I was in Pittsburgh last year, and I stayed in a nice hotel, 5-star. Underneath had the restaurants, the stores. There was a pharmacy. I walked in to get something, and I took video. It was unbelievable. The Cadbury chocolate bars were locked up. So you had to call the girl. And the thing, I was there a week. Every time I went into the store, it was dead, right? And I'm thinking, are they losing customers because the customers got to wait and ask for these things? Like they said, $4 Cadbury chocolate bar was in glass with a key. You had to call the girl, if she was helping people. You just get fed up and walk out. Yeah. And I went back there this year, the same hotel. I go downstairs, the place is for lease. And I was talking to the manager there the first time, and I said, "Do you have security?" She goes, "No, we don't. We never had security. It's just we had to lock everything up."
Tom, you mentioned something there that it's actually a concern, and we're seeing more and more of businesses having to shut down.
Yeah,
and not just independent single businesses, but sometimes it's bigger organizations that are setting certain locations in areas because it's no longer sustainable for one reason or another. And it could be can't hire, thefts are too high, violence too high, and there's other ways to get goods to consumer. But when you think about that, it's this vicious circle. If you think of a community where you might have a grocery store, a convenience store, gas bar, something of that nature, that it serves that community. And if crime is so bad that the organization decides it's no longer sustainable, either we can't make any revenue here, any profit, or people don't want to work here, or it's just too repetitively violent, when you leave, trying to release that property becomes difficult. And the longer it stays vacant, the more it becomes inviting for the criminal element.
Yeah, this wasn't an independent farm. It was a well-known.
And it happens. We've seen it.
You see it here.
It's in the news in Canada over the last couple of years. We've seen major chains close up locations in certain areas where it's just no longer sustainable. And it's not always the profit, because people instantly think profit. But if you can't hire people, or people are terrified of working, or crime is really bad, businesses are in business to make money. And nobody should ever fault a business for making money.
No.
you know, I always kind of reflect on when somebody, oh, that company's making record profits. What's wrong with that? As a retailer, I own now 2 locations. We'll open a third one February 1st of next year. I'm a business owner. I didn't buy a business to lose money. I bought a business to make money.
Yeah.
And anybody who like, well, Rui, you shouldn't be profiting. Well, then why would I operate a business?
Yeah.
So no matter how big you are, I think from a sentiment where consumers say, well, it's a company with big pockets. Well, if they run the business well and they pay their people well and they're making great profits, that's a company I would love to work with. That tells me they know what they're doing because consumers are going in and trading their cash for the goods that they're selling. That's what business is about. So we shouldn't attack businesses that are profitable. And when a business makes a decision that I can no longer sustain, I can't make a profit in this area and I have to close up, and maybe it's our location a little while away, or we try to service that market through online deliveries. There's other ways we can serve consumers, but the net effect is that location, if it stays unoccupied, we see it. You have a homelessness issue that starts to deploy, drugs, all of that. They start to see the graffiti. It becomes an invite for criminal element to start to transpire. And when you start to lose that, you start to lose parts of the communities. And you can see that in every major city in Canada today. Okay,
just a quick question. What do you think? There's a lot of, you hear, I've hired some guys and they'll tell me, oh, there's this company that does that does the training, security training, but they'll just pass anybody if you just pay them off. I get some guys, we interview them, and I'm thinking, how did this guy even get through the testing? Like, he can't speak English. I see, do you see that a lot? I see it.
Yeah, I see it. Listen, and that's why I say I don't want to admonish anyone. It's out there.
Yeah.
I see the other side of that. Right?
Yeah,
when
exactly.
we are working with guards and I go back and start to look at it, it's obvious somebody expedited their license.
Exactly.
The requirement of 40 hours, they didn't spend 40 hours.
No.
Somebody wrote that off as though they did because they want to fill a site. And sadly, that really brings our industry down. And it happens today. It's still happening out. There are companies out there that are still pushing people through. We know it.
Exactly.
Now, some companies may be much larger and can afford to have that kind of scrutiny, but we all know it happens in the industry. But it's also the onus on the people issuing the licenses to be more rigorous about it. Hence that tiered level.
That's right. Yeah, right. Exactly.
If you have to bring somebody in for recertification, retraining, you're making sure you're spending time with that individual and they're making that commitment, because we all know today it's very easy. And if you look at it in a lot of provinces, they're behind on being able to issue those licenses, right? I think, I don't know all of them, but in Manitoba, because it comes up in our committee meetings, I think the member from the minister mentioned that they've issued 2,000 to 2,500 more licenses this last year than they did the year before. Like, that's a lot of people coming into the industry. That's a lot of consumption. And it's not just the retailers. It's other commercial properties, hospitals, other warehousing that are using the guard services. When you have that much demand, there has to be responsibility and there has to be onus on those issuing the licenses to somehow audit the companies that are out there providing the services to make sure it's legitimate. We've heard all kinds of stories. People paying their guards under the table to get a lot of hours. I've come across guards who have come to my sites after spending 9 hours on another site. And they're coming, how can you do an 18-hour shift?
Or these little family-owned security companies, and they got all their family working for them.
Can't do it. You can't expect anybody to be alert, aware. And again, maybe if I was stocking a shelf, it's not as relevant. But when you're supposed to be there present to protect premises, people, you have to be alert and aware.
That's right.
But it happens a lot. These guards are not making a lot. They're going from an 8 or a 12-hour shift, trying to pick up another 8-hour. I mean, that's just not reasonable.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be done in our industry. And I think that's where onus is on those in the industry themselves to be more responsible. But there's a lot of onuses on the registrars and those issuing the licenses to make sure that they are out there overseeing, governing, and auditing what happens and making sure that there's some due diligence done and then consequences for those that are abusing it.
Rui, I'd like to thank you for coming in, giving us the time.
My pleasure.
Wish you success in your business.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's been a pleasure. It's obviously a topic I'm very passionate about. based on the work I do as a consultant and the work I do with my clients. More importantly, I love Canada. It's given me an amazing opportunity. As you can see, I'm very proud of where I am today, the life my daughters have. I'm born in Portugal, been here since I was 9. I love this country. I don't like what I've seen happen over the last 8 years. And I honestly love to be part of making some of that change. So if this impacts anyone to get involved in their community and do something and take back our community is great. However, as a Canadian, I'm going to do my part to thank this country for what they've done for me.
Thank you.